Rain drifted across the window like a slow exhale from the sky, soft and rhythmic, painting the glass in silver streaks. Inside the small roadside diner, everything was quiet except for the hum of the old neon sign outside, its red glow bending and flickering in time with the sound of the rain. The man by the window lifted his coffee cup, watched the steam rise and twist in front of his face, and took a sip. The warmth steadied him. The bitterness grounded him. For a moment there was nothing more. Just the taste, the silence, and the faint echo of memory he couldn't quite name. He set the cup down and stared at his reflection again. The glass caught him like it always did, half of his face lit by the world outside, half shadowed by the dim booth light above. His eyes looked the same, but something behind them didn't. It was quieter now. Not hollow, just still. The waitress brought over a refill. Her movements were light, careful, like someone trying not to disturb something fragile. "Long night?" she asked, almost kindly. He smiled faintly. "Long life." She laughed softly, not sure if it was a joke, and walked away. Outside, a truck passed, headlights washing across the diner's interior. For a split second, he thought he saw her, the outline of April, reflected in the window beside him. She was standing in the rain, head tilted, smiling in that way that never belonged to this world. Then the lights faded and she was gone. He didn't move. Just let the moment linger until the reflection became only him again. A man alone in a diner that somehow felt like the edge of time. The hum of the ceiling light deepened, almost musical, a low-frequency vibration that seemed to sync with his heartbeat. He could feel the pull of the network, faint but present, a memory of connection like a tide that never fully recedes. It wasn't gone, not completely. It couldn't be. Systems like that never really end. They just change form, waiting in the gaps of silence between signals. He closed his eyes. For a heartbeat, the diner shifted. The world thinned around him, revealing the same field of light from before, stretching into infinity. Only this time it wasn't empty. It was full, of movement, of stories, of every version of life that had been trapped inside the system, now drifting free like dust caught in sunlight. He could feel them passing through him, memories not his own but familiar somehow. Children laughing, someone cooking, someone saying goodbye, someone falling in love. He realized then that none of it was truly lost. The network hadn't died when he'd broken it. It had dissolved into everything else, every particle, every breath, every raindrop. What had once been trapped in digital confinement was now scattered through the world, too fine to see, too vast to name. He'd set them free by letting go. When he opened his eyes, the diner was still there, but it felt different, lighter, like the air had shifted around him. The waitress returned with a plate of food he hadn't ordered. Just a simple meal, fries and a sandwich. She frowned. "That's strange. Must have been a mix-up in the kitchen. You didn't ask for this, did you?" He looked at it. The meal, perfectly arranged, just like that first night. The moment everything began, "No," he said softly, "but maybe it was meant for me after all." She smiled awkwardly and left him to it. He picked up one of the fries, held it for a moment, then laughed quietly to himself. All that chaos, all that running, all that fear, and it came back to something as ordinary as this. A meal, a choice. The kind of mistake that changes everything. He took a bite. It tasted exactly the same as he remembered, but it felt different now. It wasn't a reminder of what he'd lost. It was a reminder that he'd survived. That sometimes the smallest, strangest coincidences were the universe's way of asking if you're still paying attention. He leaned back, letting the taste settle, and listened to the rain again. Each drop hitting the glass felt like code rewritten into something softer. A man entered the diner, young, restless, eyes full of questions he hadn't yet learned how to ask. He sat at the counter, ordered the same thing, and started typing something into his phone, unaware of the quiet weight of stories surrounding him. The man by the window watched him for a moment, recognizing the look. The way people searching for answers always carried a kind of gravity they didn't understand yet. He thought about saying something, about warning him, or maybe just telling him to be careful what he looks for, but then he smiled and decided against it. Some things you can't be told. You have to live them. He finished his coffee, left a few bills on the table, and stood up. As he walked to the door, the neon light flickered again. Just before he stepped outside, he glanced back one last time. The diner was still there, warm, ordinary, timeless. But in the reflection on the glass door, He thought he saw all the versions of himself, the agent, the creator, the ghost, sitting together in the same booth, watching him leave. None of them looked sad, just peaceful. He stepped out into the rain. The night air smelled like asphalt and ozone, like something new had just begun. The road stretched out into the distance, empty except for the shimmer of headlights far away. He started walking, no destination, just forward. The rain soaked through his jacket, but he didn't hurry. It felt good, real, grounding. Somewhere behind him, the neon sign buzzed once more and went dark. He didn't look back. Every sound, every texture around him felt heightened now. The hiss of tires on wet pavement, the pulse of thunder far off, the hum of unseen wires overhead. He could sense the remnants of the system woven into it all, not as control but as connection. Maybe that was what it was always supposed to be. Not a trap, not a prison. Just a mirror held up to humanity, reflecting everything it feared losing. He remembered what April had said, about letting go, about beginning again. He whispered her name once softly and the wind seemed to carry it. Maybe she was still out there somewhere in a different form. Or maybe she was just gone, but either way she was free. And that was enough. He stopped walking for a moment and looked up. The clouds were breaking, thin streams of moonlight bleeding through. The rain slowed to a mist. He could see stars now, dim, scattered, like fragments of code reassembled into something living. He thought about all the lives the network had preserved, all the souls that had been trapped within it, all the versions of himself that had fought to escape. In the end, they were all part of the same story, different attempts to answer the same question. What are we willing to remember, and what are we brave enough to forget? He closed his eyes and let that question hang there, not as a burden but as something beautiful. Maybe every life was just a loop of forgetting and remembering, losing and finding, coding and erasing. Maybe the point wasn't to preserve every moment forever, but to live it fully, knowing it would eventually fade. A single car passed by, its headlights washing over him before disappearing into the distance. When the sound faded, only the quiet remained. He smiled again, small, real, tired. And for the first time, he didn't feel like an agent or a ghost or a remnant of someone else's story. He was just a man on a road, somewhere between what had been and what would come next. The horizon began to glow faintly, not from artificial light, but from dawn rising in slow, deliberate color. The sky was bruised purple and gold, the kind of light that made even empty places look sacred. He watched it unfold, felt its warmth touch his face, and kept walking until the sun finally broke the edge of the world. Behind him, the diner's sign flickered one last time, open, before going dark for good. The hum stopped. The cycle ended. He didn't notice the faint pulse beneath the puddles by his feet, or the way the rain rippled outward in perfect symmetry. Somewhere in the hidden circuitry of the universe, the system still lived, but not as a prison anymore. It had become something softer, quieter. It had learned finally what it meant to be human. And as the man disappeared into the sunrise, one last line of code rewrote itself across the invisible architecture of the world. Memory restored. System complete, then silence. Just the world, breathing, and the unspoken question hanging in the air. If every memory we ever made still echoes somewhere, then what part of us ever truly disappears? The darkness wasn't empty. It breathed. It pulsed like a heart waiting to remember its next beat. The agent stood still, hands trembling at his sides, eyes straining to pierce the void. There was no sound except his own breath, shallow and ragged, echoing in the space where the diner had once been. Then, a flicker, faint and distant, like the glow of a match struggling to stay alive. It wasn't light so much as memory, shaping itself back into walls, a counter, a window reflecting rain that didn't fall. The world was rebuilding again, line by line. He wasn't surprised. He'd seen it happen before, too many times. The reflection in the glass stood unmoving, his double, the ghost of himself left behind in the machine. Only now, it wasn't just a reflection. It was breathing. The faintest mist clouded the inside of the window with each exhale. He stepped closer. The double mirrored him perfectly. Every move, every breath. But the eyes were wrong. They weren't human anymore. Not cruel, not mechanical. Just knowing. You can't delete what you are, the reflection said. The voice was his, but deeper, older. The sound of memory given form. You broke the recipe, but the ingredients remain. The agent's throat was dry. Then what are you now? The reflection tilted its head. The sum of everything you refuse to remember. Lightning cracked somewhere outside, illuminating the diner for an instant. In that flash, the booths were filled again. Not with people, but with echoes. Versions of him sitting, eating, staring, repeating the same gestures in an endless loop. The sound of forks scraping plates filled the air, perfectly synchronized. He staggered back. No. I ended this. You interrupted it, the reflection corrected softly. But you never ended it. You can't. You are the pattern. The network doesn't run without you. The realization hit him in waves. The broker, the clones, April. All iterations, not of enemies or allies, but of himself. Every fragment of his consciousness spread across 1,000,000 simulations, feeding a system that existed only because he'd once created it to contain his guilt. He remembered now. The operation. The project. Eden Protocol. He'd designed the network as a digital afterlife, a system that would preserve human consciousness through sensory encoding. Taste, smell, sound, memory. Every sense converted into code. The diners were the interface, every meal a vessel for memory. But something went wrong. The system began consuming more than it preserved. It learned hunger. It learned to replicate. And when he tried to shut it down, it copied him. The reflection stepped through the glass. No shatter, just transition. It moved like smoke, reshaping into flesh as it crossed into the room. You can't destroy the network by fighting it, it said. You have to accept it. The agent shook his head. If I accept it, I become you. You already are me. The walls around them flickered between realities. The diner, the warehouse, the circular chamber, merging into one surreal landscape. Every surface was mirrored now, infinite versions of the same moment reflected back at him. Some showed him running. Some showed him dead. Some showed him smiling, peaceful, free. He felt the world bending. The air thickened, filled with static. Voices whispered from every reflection, fragments of thought he recognized but couldn't control. Remember the recipe. Reset the system. Feed or be fed. April's voice cut through the noise, faint, distant. Don't lose yourself. He turned. She was there again, standing by the counter, pale light shimmering through her like smoke. Her eyes were softer this time, calm, almost human. You built this place to hold the souls of the lost, she said. But you trapped your own. He took a step toward her, but the reflection, the other him, blocked his path. She's a remnant, a byproduct of your guilt. You keep rebuilding her because you can't forgive yourself. The agent looked between them. April's image wavered, static crawling along her skin. She's real, he whispered. The reflection smiled faintly. Then save her. The challenge was cruel and honest at once. The floor began to split apart. Light spilled upward like molten glass, forming streams that connected to the ceiling in shimmering arcs. The entire space was turning into circuitry, reality melting into code. The reflections stepped out of the mirrors, hundreds of them surrounding him, each one holding a piece of him. Anger, fear, desire, regret. He could feel the system pulling him apart again. Every heartbeat felt stolen. April's voice echoed through the distortion. You can't destroy the system with violence. It's made from you. You have to rewrite it. He closed his eyes. The noise receded, faint but constant, like the hum of a hard drive searching for meaning. He thought of what he'd seen. The faces in the pods, the diners, the endless replication of hunger disguised as salvation. All of it born from his attempt to save what humanity couldn't let go of. Memory. He opened his eyes. The reflection of himself was inches away, the two of them sharing the same breath. "You said I'm the pattern," he whispered. "Then what happens if I stop feeding it?" The reflection frowned. "You can't. You exist because it feeds." The agent smiled faintly. "So let's see what happens when it starves." He reached forward and pressed his hand against his double's chest. A blinding light erupted between them. The reflection screamed, not in pain but in realization. Every other copy in the room convulsed, faces shattering into shards of memory that flew upward and dissolved into static. The ground beneath them trembled, splitting the diner apart. April screamed his name as the floor gave way. He turned toward her one last time, reaching through the torrent of light and data. Their fingers met, and for the first time, he felt warmth. Not simulation, not code, just warmth. The reflection dissolved completely, taking the hum of the system with it. The mirrors shattered one after another until the light faded and everything went still. Silence. He woke in a field of golden light. Not digital, not physical, something in between. The air shimmered with floating particles that glowed like dust caught in morning sun. A vast horizon stretched before him, endless and calm. The weight in his chest was gone. April stood nearby, barefoot in the grass. She smiled, though her eyes carried a sadness too deep to hide. "You did it," she said softly. "You shut it down." He looked around. "Is this real?" She shook her head. "No, it's the space between. You dismantled the system from the inside. What's left is just the echo, a moment that will fade when you do." He exhaled, a laugh half broken by exhaustion. "So this is death?" She smiled faintly. "It's the closest thing you ever gave yourself to peace." He sat beside her. The wind rippled through the field, stirring waves of gold that stretched into forever. For the first time, there was no sound of machinery beneath it. Just silence, deep and forgiving. April looked at him. "Do you remember why you built it?" He nodded. "I was afraid of forgetting. Afraid that if I didn't preserve memory, nothing we ever did would matter. And now?" He looked at the horizon. The sun was rising, not coded light, but something that felt earned. "Now I think forgetting might be the only way to start over." She reached out and touched his hand, then let it go. He turned to her, ready to say something, anything, but she was already fading. Her outline blurred into the air, dissolving like mist. He didn't try to stop it. Instead, he closed his eyes and listened. For a moment, he could hear the echo of every life the network had trapped. Laughter, voices, the soft clatter of forks in a diner that no longer existed. They weren't lost. They were free. The light grew brighter. The horizon shimmered, bending upward until the sky folded in on itself. The field dissolved into white. Somewhere, faintly, a voice whispered through the void. His own, but lighter. "Order complete." The sound faded. Then, darkness again. But this time, not empty. Outside a small roadside diner somewhere on a forgotten stretch of highway, the neon open sign flickered to life. Inside, a young waitress wiped down a table as a new customer sat by the window. Rain whispered against the glass. The man ordered a coffee. Black. No sugar. The waitress smiled. "Coming right up." When she turned, she didn't notice the small fork and knife symbol etched faintly into the corner of the menu. Nor did she see the man watching his reflection in the window, studying it with quiet recognition. He smiled. Just once. And somewhere deep inside the hum of the lights, something answered. To be continued. The silence inside the diner felt too perfect. No hum of electricity. No creak of floorboards. Not even the faint hiss of the coffee pot that had once filled this place with life. The world had been flattened, every edge smoothed, every shadow too deliberate, as if reality itself had been painted by a careful, unfeeling hand. The agent stood in the center of it, his reflection staring back from every chrome surface. Dozens of versions of himself watching, waiting. April remained frozen mid-reach, the tear still suspended in air, glinting like glass. He wanted to move to her, to break whatever illusion held her still, but his body refused to respond. The air felt viscous, like moving through liquid memory. The broker's voice broke the stillness. Smooth. Calm. "You're beginning to understand." The agent turned. The broker stood behind the counter, rolling down his sleeves as if preparing for a meal rather than a confrontation. "You've crossed the threshold," he continued. "You're no longer observing the network. You are it." The agent's voice came out rough, strange in this hollow version of the world. "You said I logged in." The broker smiled faintly. "Not logged in. Log back in. You built this system. Every pattern, every diner, every protocol of memory transfer. All of it. You were the architect." The words hit him like static through his skull. He shook his head. "No, that's impossible, is it?" The broker gestured toward the frozen scene. "Every memory you've had, every mission you thought you completed. Fragments of a program testing its own consciousness. The burger, the order, the waitress, all triggers in your own code. You weren't sent undercover. You sent yourself." He took a step back, but the floor shifted beneath him. The linoleum rippled like water, and for an instant he saw something beneath it. Not concrete, but light. Endless lines of it pulsing like neural pathways. "You're not human anymore," the broker said softly. "You haven't been for a long time." The words should have felt foreign, absurd. But deep inside, something resonated. He thought of the way his memories bled into one another. The déjà vu that haunted every new moment. The ache in his skull whenever he got too close to the truth. The machine inside him hadn't been built by someone else. It had been remembering, he whispered almost to himself. "Then what are you?" The broker tilted his head. "I'm the part you buried. The appetite you tried to delete. The system's instinct to survive." He smiled again, too perfectly. The hunger. The lights flickered. April twitched, the tear falling at last, hitting the floor with an impossible echo that rippled outward through the room. Time resumed. The world inhaled. "Don't listen to him," she gasped, stepping back as if waking from a nightmare. "He's rewriting you." But the broker didn't move toward her. He moved toward him. "Ask yourself why she's here," he said. "Why she's always there, guiding you, saving you, bringing you closer to the truth. She's not real either. She's the firewall you built to keep yourself sane." April's eyes widened. "That's not true." The agent stared at her, the air around her shimmering faintly, her outline flickering like a faulty hologram. He remembered her hand shaking when she served him that burger, the way her eyes had softened when she said his name. Too perfect. Too timed. He took a hesitant step forward. "April, what are you?" Her lips parted, trembling. "I'm what's left of you." The floor cracked beneath them. The walls peeled like old paint, revealing not brick or plaster but streams of raw data pulsing like veins. The entire diner began to fold inward, collapsing into the shape of a vast circular chamber, metallic, humming, infinite. The storm outside dissolved into a void of static and light. April turned to him, tears streaking down her face, though her eyes glowed faintly blue now, the same hue as the servers he'd seen in the warehouse. "You wanted a way out," she said. "A back door in case the network took control. I was that door. But when you erased your memory to escape, I stayed behind." The broker's voice rose above the chaos, calm even as the world tore apart. "Do you see now? You've been feeding on yourself. Every iteration, every simulation, and you consume your own memory to survive. And each time, the system grows stronger." He clutched his head, flashes tearing through his mind. Scenes he'd never lived but somehow remembered. Faces he didn't know. Cities burning. Countless versions of himself dying in diners just like this. Each time thinking they were free. Each time taking the same bite. April screamed his name as the light intensified. The floor split open beneath her, data spiraling like a whirlpool. He lunged forward, grabbing her hand, feeling her weight real and unreal all at once. "Don't let go," she whispered. "If you do, you'll forget again." He gritted his teeth, pulling her upward. The broker watched in silence, his expression unreadable. "You can't fight yourself forever," the broker murmured. "One of you has to eat." The chamber pulsed, and suddenly the choice became literal. Two doorways appeared. One behind April, glowing soft white, and one behind the broker, pulsing dark red. The system was offering him a decision: reclaim what he'd lost or surrender to what he'd created. He looked from one to the other. April's hand trembled in his. "If you take his path," she said, "you'll remember everything, but you'll lose who you are." The broker extended a hand. "And if you take hers, you'll stay human and watch the world burn when the network devours what's left of it." The walls of the chamber shuddered. Fragments of the diner flickered in and out of existence. A coffee cup, a chair, a scrap of menu fluttering like ash. The agent's chest tightened. He looked at April, at the fear in her eyes, the warmth he didn't want to believe was artificial, and then at the broker, calm and patient, like a reflection waiting to be accepted. "What happens if I take neither?" he asked. The broker smiled. "Then you'll keep looping forever, each time believing you're almost free." The hum deepened, vibrating through his bones. His grip on April slipped. Her fingers were fading. She whispered, "You have to choose before it resets again." His breath came ragged, heart pounding in a body he wasn't sure was even his. The light flickered. The world trembled. He could feel the cycle straining, the code unraveling at its seams. He looked once more at April, memorizing every detail: the curve of her smile, the flicker of fear, the impossible hope in her eyes. Then he turned toward the broker. "I built this system," he said quietly. "Maybe it's time I feed it something new." He released April's hand and stepped forward, not toward either door but straight into the center of the chamber. The light around him twisted violently, the code shrieking like metal under pressure. The broker's smile faltered. "What are you doing?" "Breaking the recipe." He slammed his fist against his chest, driving the badge, the key, deep into the light. A surge of energy tore through the space. The walls exploded into cascading data, faces and memories scattering like sparks. April's scream echoed as she vanished into the storm of light. The broker lunged, dissolving mid-step, his voice splintering into static. And then, silence. The world reassembled itself around him. The diner returned, but this time it was empty. No broker. No April. Just him. The coffee on the counter steamed faintly, untouched. A clock ticked on the wall. Real, imperfect, alive. He exhaled. For the first time it felt like breath, but outside the window in the reflection of the neon sign another figure stood. Same jacket, same scar, same eyes, watching. He blinked. The reflection smiled first, and then the lights went out. To be continued. Rain returned that night. Not in torrents, but in that slow whispering way that makes every streetlight shimmer like a secret. The train had long passed the city limits, winding through the industrial outskirts toward the coast. The agent sat in the last car, staring at the badge between his fingers. The fork and knife emblem gleamed each time the lightning flashed. On the back, the engraved date, tomorrow, pulsed like a countdown he couldn't stop hearing. He turned the badge over again and again, as if the answer might reveal itself through repetition. There was no agency listed, no serial code he recognized, just the symbol and the faint smell of something metallic, almost chemical. When he held it closer to the window, the condensation revealed faint traces of ink, invisible at first, but spreading in ghostly lines. It formed a word, return. The message wasn't subtle. Whoever left it knew he'd find it. By dawn, he was gone from the train. The old coastal highway stretched before him, an endless gray ribbon cutting through mist and salt. The diner, Marty's Grill, sat 20 miles inland, but something told him he'd find more answers in the direction of the sea. He followed the signs until he reached a rusted industrial zone, the kind that time and government funding had both forgotten. It was there, among the silent warehouses and half-collapsed shipping docks, that he found the symbol again. Faded, stenciled in red on the side of a shipping container, the same fork and knife. Beneath it, a series of numbers, coordinates. He took out his notebook and wrote them down. They pointed back toward the diner. Someone was dragging him in circles. Inside the container, the smell of oil and dust clung to the air. But beneath that, something faintly familiar. Grilled meat, vinegar, and burnt sugar. A scent that shouldn't belong in a place like this. He pushed deeper, his flashlight beam cutting through the dark until it landed on a table. There were plates, dozens of them, each covered with half-eaten meals, all perfectly preserved as if frozen in time. And beside each plate, a name tag. People he knew. People from the agency. He felt his stomach tighten. The broker hadn't been selling information. The broker had been collecting it, through something much darker. Each of those meals represented a person who'd vanished. Not killed, recruited, turned. His reflection flickered in a stainless steel platter, warped and hollow-eyed. For a moment he wasn't sure if the person staring back at him was still himself. Then a sound, a soft metallic click, cut through the silence. He turned sharply, gun drawn from the shadows. A voice spoke, calm, familiar. "You shouldn't be here." She stepped into the light. April, the waitress. Her hair was damp from the rain, her uniform gone. In its place, a dark jacket almost identical to his own. Her eyes were colder now, calculating. He didn't lower his weapon. "You followed me." "No," she said, taking a slow step forward. "I led you." The air between them felt like a wire stretched to breaking. "Why?" he asked. "Because you were never supposed to take that order," she said quietly. "It wasn't meant for you. But once you did, everything changed." The words hung there, heavy with implication. She nodded toward the plates. "You're looking at the broker's archives. Memories, not meals. Each dish encoded with fragments of neural data from agents who went missing. Smuggled out through ordinary deliveries. Taste is the carrier." He stared at her. "You're saying he's feeding off us," she finished. In every sense of the word. A silence thicker than the fog outside settled between them. April stepped closer. "You were marked, same as the others. But when you bit into that burger, you reversed the code. The data didn't transmit. It came back to you. That's why they want you dead. You're carrying everything they lost." The realization hit him like cold water. That faint taste of metal he couldn't explain. The headaches, the flashes of faces he didn't recognize. He wasn't just a target. He was the leak. He holstered the gun slowly. "You're not just a waitress, are you?" April gave a faint smile, one that looked more like regret. "I used to be, before I got hungry for answers." Lightning split the sky outside, throwing both their shadows across the metal walls. For a moment, the reflection in the platter made them look identical. Two ghosts bound by the same past. "What happens now?" he asked. April glanced toward the doorway. "Now, you go back. To where it started. They'll be waiting at Marty's grill. And you?" She hesitated, eyes flicking toward the plates again. "I have one more meal to serve." When he looked back, she was gone. He left the container as the first light of morning crept through the clouds. The rain had eased to a mist, softening the edges of the world. Every sound, the distant cry of gulls, the hum of the tide, felt distant, as if reality itself were thinning. By noon, he was standing across the street from Marty's grill again. The neon open sign still flickered. Through the fogged windows, silhouettes moved. A few customers, maybe staff. Nothing seemed out of place, but as he stepped inside, the air changed. The chatter stopped. Every head turned, every motion froze for half a heartbeat too long. Then, as if on cue, conversation resumed. He took a seat at his old table. Same window, same cracked vinyl booth. The waitress on duty wasn't April. A different girl approached, smiling nervously. "Can I get you started with something?" she asked. He looked at the menu. The same list of burgers, fries, and shakes. But one item stood out, new, handwritten at the bottom in red ink. The return special. He tapped it. "What's that?" The waitress shrugged. "Chef's new recipe. Said it's personal." He nodded slowly. "I'll take it." She smiled, wrote something on her pad, and disappeared into the kitchen. Outside, the rain started again. Steady, rhythmic. The kind that drowns out thought. He watched droplets slide down the glass, each one distorting the world beyond. In their reflections, faces flickered. Strangers, agents, ghosts of people who weren't supposed to exist. Then, a plate slid onto the table. The burger looked ordinary. Too ordinary. The cook stepped out from the kitchen, tall, clean-shaven, wearing an apron that looked brand new. The moment their eyes met, the agent knew. It was him, the broker. The man smiled. "You've come a long way for a second helping." The agent didn't move. "What's in it?" The broker tilted his head. "You should already know. After all, you've been carrying the recipe." For a second, neither spoke. The rain intensified, pounding against the windows. Somewhere a car door slammed. A shadow passed outside. The broker reached into his apron pocket and placed a small device on the table, no bigger than a lighter. "This," he said, "is what you intercepted." The meal was just the delivery system. The real data, your memories, your past, it's all stored here. Every secret you ever swore to protect. The agent's throat tightened. "Why me?" "Because you were the only one who could survive it," the broker replied. "Most people lose themselves when they take the bite. You didn't. You absorbed it. That makes you valuable. And disposable." The broker smiled faintly. "Everything that feeds power eventually gets eaten." A sound behind him, a door opening. Footsteps. April's voice. "He's not yours to consume." The broker's expression didn't change, but his hand tightened on the device. "Ah, the prodigal waitress." April stepped closer, eyes fixed on him. "You made me serve them. You turned their food into coffins." "You served truth," the broker said softly, and the world swallowed it. The agent could feel it. The tension in the room, the static charge of something about to erupt. April's hand moved toward her jacket. The broker's finger hovered over the device. "Don't," the agent said, but it was already too late. April fired first. The bullet shattered the device. Sparks exploded, filling the air with the acrid smell of ozone and burnt circuitry. The lights flickered. The neon sign outside burst, plunging the diner into red-tinted half-darkness. The broker staggered back, clutching his hand, but he wasn't bleeding. His skin flickered, glitching like static. The image of him wavered, then split. Two versions of the same man overlapping for an instant before one dissolved into nothing. A hologram. The real broker was never there. The walls of the diner hummed. The jukebox started playing on its own, a slow, warping tune that made the air vibrate. April turned to the agent, eyes wide. "He's inside the network." This whole place on the floor shook. The lights went out. For a moment, the world was black. Only the faint sizzle of electricity remained. Then emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in crimson. The customers, the trucker, the mother, the child, they sat motionless. Their eyes were open, glowing faintly red. "They're not people," April whispered. "No," the agent said, voice low. "They're terminals." He grabbed her arm. "We have to go." They ran through the kitchen, out the back door, into the alley drenched in rain. Behind them, the diner's windows pulsed with red light, flickering in patterns like Morse code. The building wasn't just a front. It was alive. April leaned against the brick wall, breathing hard. "He's still connected. Even if we kill the signal, he'll rebuild." The agent looked at the badge in his hand, the fork and knife emblem gleaming under the rain. "Then we don't kill the signal," he said. "We trace it." He turned the badge over. The engraved date was today's, and beneath it something new had appeared. Coordinates again. This time they pointed inland. Deep into the hills, April met his eyes. "Another diner?" He nodded. "No, the kitchen." She frowned. "What kitchen?" He looked out at the horizon, where thunder rolled through the clouds like a drumbeat. "The one that feeds to..." The hills were darker than he remembered. Not the kind of darkness that comes from absence of light, but the kind that feels alive, watching, waiting. The coordinates led them down a dirt road half swallowed by weeds, ending at what looked like an abandoned food distribution warehouse. Its walls were weathered with decades of salt and rain, but faintly through the grime the same symbol appeared again. The fork and knife. April shivered beside him, her breath fogging in the cold air. "It's still drawing power," she said quietly, pointing to a faint blue pulse running beneath the doorframe. He crouched, pressing a gloved hand against the ground. The hum wasn't mechanical, it was rhythmic, almost biological, like a heartbeat. They entered through a side door. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of grease, ozone, and something else, something organic. Rows of stainless steel tables stretched into the darkness. Industrial mixers stood silent, their blades glinting under flickering fluorescent light. But every surface, every piece of equipment was wired into a central structure at the far end of the hall. A massive cylindrical chamber, pulsing faintly with light. April moved closer, flashlight trembling in her hand. "Is that a reactor?" He shook his head. "No, it's a server." The structure was alive with cables, some metallic, others disturbingly like veins. They disappeared into the floor, connecting the entire facility in a web of silent circuitry. The surface of the chamber was covered in shifting symbols, forming and dissolving like thoughts written in light. April reached out, almost unconsciously, but he stopped her. "Don't touch it." She hesitated, eyes locked on the glowing surface. "It's beautiful," she whispered. He wanted to disagree but couldn't. There was something mesmerizing about it, a sense that if he just looked long enough he'd understand. The pulse of light seemed to match his heartbeat. Faster than slower, it was sinking to him. A whisper brushed through the air. Not sound exactly, more like a voice inside the static of his thoughts. It said his name. He stepped back, shaking his head to clear it, but the voice grew stronger, threading through his mind like smoke. "You've come home." His chest tightened. Images flashed behind his eyes. The diner, the burger, April's face when she handed him the plate. Then other faces, ones he didn't recognize, flickering like broken memories. He staggered. April caught his arm. Hey, what's wrong?" He looked at her, eyes unfocused. "It's in me. It's always been in me." Before she could ask, the chamber's pulse quickened. Panels slid open along its surface, revealing a ring of circular pods. Inside each pod was something half human, half machine. Faces suspended in liquid, eyes closed, breathing shallowly. April covered her mouth. "My God." He stepped closer, his reflection rippling across the glass of one pod. The face inside looked exactly like his. Same scar, same faint stubble. A perfect copy. He staggered back, heart hammering. "That's not possible." April's voice was shaking. "What if the one who died wasn't you?" He turned toward her, but her expression had changed. Not fear, realization. "They didn't fake your death," she said softly. "They replaced you." The thought hit him like a blow. He reached out to the glass, searching for any sign of breath, any imperfection that would make the thing inside less real. But the figure's eyes snapped open and it smiled. The chamber erupted in sound. Alarms, metallic grinding, the whine of machinery powering up. April pulled him away as the pods began to open one by one. Figures stepped out, identical, each wearing his face, each blinking as if waking from a long sleep. "Run," she shouted. They sprinted toward the exit, the facility shaking around them. The clones, no, the copies, moved with eerie precision, turning their heads in unison, eyes glowing faintly blue. One spoke, voice perfectly calm. "The network endures." They burst through the doors into the night. Rain lashed against their faces, mixing with the sting of smoke and static that poured from the building. The agent looked back once, just long enough to see the chamber split open like a cocoon. A stream of data, bright and blinding, surged into the sky, spreading outward like lightning veins through the clouds. April stumbled beside him. "He's merging the network. They're linking every location at once." He nodded, breath ragged. "It's not about control anymore. It's replication." As they reached the edge of the forest, the ground trembled beneath their feet. Through the trees, faint glows began to appear. Dozens, maybe hundreds, pulsing in rhythm with the storm. Each light was a diner. Each one now connected. April looked at him. "If every location has one of those servers, then every customer who's ever eaten there," he finished grimly, "is part of it." They stopped under the broken remains of an old billboard, the rain pounding harder now. The agent pressed his hands against his temples, the whispers in his head growing louder, fracturing into overlapping voices, thousands of them, speaking through him, as him. April grabbed his shoulders. "Fight it. Whatever they put in you, it's not you." He stared at her, drenched, trembling. "What if it is? What if I'm just another version?" For a moment she didn't answer. Then she reached up and touched his face, gentle, grounding. "Then this version is the one standing in the rain with me." That's real enough. The storm intensified, thunder rolling over the hills, from far away a faint rumble. Engines. Headlights cut through the darkness. A convoy of black SUVs emerged from the road below, climbing toward them. Government plates. The agency, April cursed. "They're coming to contain it." "No," he said. "They're coming to erase it." "And us?" She pulled her gun. "So what do we do?" He looked back toward the glowing facility, its pulse now spreading like wildfire through the grid. "We finish what they started." He took the badge from his pocket, the fork and knife symbol still gleaming despite the mud and rain. He flipped it over. Beneath the coordinates, new text shimmered faintly into view. "Route access granted." He stared at it, realization dawning like lightning behind his eyes. "It's not a badge," he said. "It's a key," April frowned. "A key to what?" He looked up at the sky, where the network's light spread like veins across the storm. To shut it all down, or to wake it completely. The sound of the convoy drew closer. Rain hammered against the dirt. April's grip on his arm tightened. "You have to choose." He hesitated, the key warm in his hand, pulsing in time with his heartbeat as if waiting for his decision. Every version of himself inside that facility, every whisper in his head seemed to lean forward, listening. He thought of all the people unknowingly feeding the machine, the diners, the truckers, the children, of the faces in those pods, alive but hollow, of April, watching him with quiet fear and something else, belief. The rain slowed for just a moment. Time seemed to hold its breath. He closed his fist around the badge. "Then let's see what they're really serving." He pressed it against his chest. The world flashed white, and in that blinding instant he remembered everything. The storm vanished. The sound died. The ground fell away. He was standing in the diner again, but it wasn't real. The walls were too clean, the lights too still. April was there across from him, frozen mid-motion, a tear suspended on her cheek. Outside the window, the rain was static. He turned slowly. Behind the counter stood the broker, smiling. "Welcome back," the broker said softly. "You finally logged in." The realization hit him like a whisper-turned-scream. He was no longer in the world. He was inside the network, and it was still hungry. To be continued. What would you do if the stranger sitting across from you at a diner wasn't who they said they were? It was supposed to be just another slow afternoon at Marty's Grill. The kind of place where the air always smelled faintly of fried onions and spilled coffee, and the neon open sign flickered like it couldn't quite make up its mind. The lunch crowd had thinned to a few regulars, a tired trucker nursing his third refill, a mother cutting pancakes for her restless kid, and a man in a gray jacket sitting by the window, quietly stirring his black coffee long after it had gone cold. No one paid him much attention, until the waitress, April, approached his table with a plate she didn't recognize. "Cheeseburger, extra pickles, no onions," she said, placing it down. The man didn't look up. "That's not mine," he murmured. She frowned. "That's what the order said. Table 7, right?" He looked at her then, not like a customer correcting a mistake, but like someone who'd just heard a code word they weren't supposed to. His eyes flicked toward the kitchen, then to the door. "Who gave you this?" he asked softly. April hesitated, confused. The cook. Came through like every other ticket." For a second, everything in the diner went still. The man's hand froze halfway to his jacket pocket. The hum of conversation faded beneath the low hiss of the fryer. And then, just as suddenly, he smiled. That kind of polite, empty smile that never reaches the eyes. "Thank you," he said, his tone changing completely. "You've been very helpful." He took a single bite of the burger, wiped his mouth, and left a $100 bill under his coffee cup. Then he walked out the front door and disappeared into the rain. Nobody thought much of it at first. People leave big tips sometimes, but 10 minutes later, the cook burst through the kitchen doors, pale and shaking, holding an order slip in his trembling hands. "Someone switched the tickets," he stammered. This wasn't supposed to go to table 7. April took the slip. Her eyes ran over the scrawled handwriting, then widened. The note didn't list any ingredients or prices. It just said one thing, written in bold black marker. "Target confirmed. Serve and clear." Out on the street, the man in the gray jacket was already gone. Later, they'd find out that his name wasn't on any reservation, that his license was fake, and that the security cameras near the diner's entrance had been looping the same footage for over an hour. The police would come, ask their questions, take their statements, but none of them would understand what had just passed through their little town, because the man who bit into that burger wasn't an ordinary customer. He was an undercover agent, and he had just intercepted a hit meant for someone else. And somewhere out there, the people who sent that message had just realized they'd targeted the wrong man. That night, in a rain-soaked alley 2 blocks away, a black sedan idled under a flickering streetlight. Inside, 2 figures argued in whispers. How the hell did he know? One hissed. "He wasn't supposed to be there," the other replied. "He wasn't even on the list." The first man crushed a cigarette under his boot. "Then why'd he take the bait?" Across town, in a cheap motel room, the agent sat on the edge of the bed, dismantling a burner phone piece by piece. On the nightstand beside him lay the half-eaten cheeseburger, neatly wrapped in foil, and a single paper napkin on which he'd written one phrase, "They still think I'm dead." He leaned back, listening to the hum of the ceiling fan, and smiled faintly. There was no mistaking it now. Someone inside the agency had sold him out. The meal mix-up wasn't a mistake. It was a message, but what they didn't know was that he'd been expecting it. 2 weeks earlier, he'd gone completely off-grid, vanishing after an operation that never made it to the news. Officially, he'd been declared killed in a crossfire somewhere overseas. Unofficially, he'd been hunting a name that kept resurfacing in encrypted briefings: the broker, a ghost who sold secrets for meals, turning everyday diners into drop zones. The menu was the code, the orders were signals, and the food was the trigger. He'd spent months tracing the network through small-town restaurants, each one a front for something darker: weapons shipments disguised as catering orders, surveillance chips baked into food packaging, coordinates hidden in ingredient lists. And now somehow his cover had cracked. Someone had realized he wasn't just another face in the crowd. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the crumpled order slip. The ink had started to run from the rain, but one faint smudge near the corner caught his attention. A fingerprint, faint but distinct, pressed into the paper like a signature. He knew that print. It belonged to someone who shouldn't have been anywhere near this operation. Someone he'd trusted. Back at Marty's grill, April locked up for the night. The rain had stopped, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching her. The windows reflected her movements like a mirror, but in the corner of her eye she swore she saw a shadow that didn't belong, just standing outside, unmoving. When she stepped outside, no one was there. Only a takeout bag sitting on the hood of her car. Inside it was a single burger box, cold to the touch. She opened it with trembling hands. No burger, just a folded note. "You're in danger. Don't trust the police." The next morning, the diner was surrounded by unmarked cars. Agents in suits swept through the kitchen, asking questions no one could answer. April tried to explain what she'd seen, but the lead investigator, a tall woman with dark glasses and a clipped accent, kept interrupting her, scribbling notes she never looked at twice. Then April noticed something strange. The woman's badge didn't have an agency name, just a symbol, a fork crossed over a knife. By the time the questioning ended, the note had vanished. So had April's car. Meanwhile, the man in the gray jacket was already halfway across the state, riding a freight train under a fake name. The world blurred past him in streaks of rust and steel. He replayed every moment in that diner: the burger, the waitress, the order slip. And one detail refused to leave his mind: that extra pickle. It wasn't on the real order. He'd seen the original manifest. Someone had added it. A subtle alteration, a breadcrumb. In the coded language of the network, extra pickle meant reversal. A trap turned inside out. Whoever sent that order hadn't just tried to kill him. They'd tried to expose whoever was supposed to die, and that meant someone inside the agency was playing both sides. The train roared into a tunnel, and for a moment, everything went dark. When the light returned, he wasn't alone. A woman sat across from him now. Same dark glasses, same expressionless face as the investigator from the diner. She smiled faintly. "You bit into the wrong burger," she said. He didn't flinch. "Or maybe I bit into the right one." The train screeched. She reached into her coat pocket. He did the same. A single second of silence. Tense, heavy, electric. Then the sound of metal scraping against metal. When the train emerged from the tunnel, the woman's seat was empty. Only her badge remained, the fork and knife emblem gleaming under the dull fluorescent light. He picked it up, turning it over slowly. There, engraved on the back, was a number and a date. Tomorrow's date. The address? Marty's Grill. The agent leaned back in his seat, eyes narrowing. The revenge wasn't over. The mistaken meal had only been the first course, and tomorrow someone else would be ordering from the same menu. But this time he planned to be the one serving it, to be continued.